Welcome to our new series called Amplify. And we're going to be talking about the voices inside our head that can either help or hinder our performance in sports, business, and life. And today's key question is, are you amplifying the wrong voice inside your head? I was running a soundboard for a band as a part of a retreat several years ago, and I had meticulously marked out the microphone so I knew which levels to increase for the vocalist and maybe which levels to take down for some of the people in the band who couldn't sing as well as the vocalist could. And so I came back after an hour of preparing for that as we were getting ready to go on, and I was going to be running the soundboard, and somebody had taken off all the microphones that I had marked out. And so I was running blind as far as not knowing whose levels I needed to amp up and whose levels I needed to take down. And so we're getting ready to start, and so we're getting into the first song, and I start to increase the levels on a microphone that I thought was one of the vocalists. But it actually happened to be the guitar player who couldn't sing very well and usually was just there as a background vocalist. And as I slowly increased that level, his voice got louder and louder. So much so that one of the vocalists turned around and didn't know what was happening and was looking at him. And the guitar player was trying to sing softer and softer, but his voice kept getting louder and louder because I was increasing his level and not the level of one of the vocalists. And I think it's a good metaphor for sometimes in life, in sports, in business, we can amplify the wrong voice inside our head, and it hinders our performance. And I've seen this time and time again in working with athletes and working with business leaders and entrepreneurs that they start amplifying the wrong voices inside their head, and their negative voices. They're forces that come against them to hinder their performance and to undercut their performance. And that key question is really important to you. As you think about your self-talk, as you think about, what may be hindering your best performance, it may be that you're amplifying the wrong voice in your life. The word amplify means to increase the sound or strength of a sound, and it's to make louder. And so when we think about amplifying, we need to make sure that we're amplifying the right voices, and we'll talk about that in a future episode. But today I want you to think about that question for this week and think about the voices inside your head, and are you increasing the strength of that sound? Are you making those louder by what you do? Even if it's saying, I want to avoid that, you hear avoid really softly and you hear that negative thing, that fear, that doubt, anxiety, the lack of confidence get louder and louder in your mind, and you're amplifying the wrong voice. And I want to give you 3 questions to help you to know if you're amplifying the wrong voice inside your head. And the first one is this voice hindering your performance? And you know you're amplifying the wrong voice if it's hindering your performance. If you basically get to that level of fear and you get to a certain shot on the golf course, if you're a golfer, or you get to a certain obstacle or certain challenging circumstance in any kind of aspect of life, and it leads to hindering your performance, you know you're amplifying the wrong voice in your life. A second question would be, does it lead to a downward spiral? You know you're amplifying the wrong voice if it leads to a downward spiral, meaning, okay, here it comes again. I'm facing this challenging circumstance. I'm facing this doubt. I'm facing this fear. I'm facing this opponent, or I've been here before, and it just leads to a negative performance because you see the same scenario coming up over and over and over again, and it leads to that downward spiral in your life. And I think it's important that we think about what is triggering that, what is causing that, and does it lead to you not being present in future moments because you encounter that fear or you encounter that doubt, and you increase and amplify the voice of that doubt in your head. I don't know if I can make this shot. I don't know if we can win this game because of a challenging circumstance, or because that same fear keeps coming up in your life and you're amplifying that either consciously or subconsciously in your life. And you know that you're amplifying that if it leads to a downward spiral that leads to not only a bad moment, but future bad moments because of that. And I think the third question to know if you're amplifying the wrong voice is, does it lead to a limiting belief? I had a pro baseball player that he had a voice inside his head that he was amplifying, that it was a negative voice that was hindering his performance, so much so that it led to a limiting belief where he told me, well, I always have a bad April. And I knew kind of what he was trying to say, because he was saying they're about 4 or 5 months to the season. And so I know I'm going to have a bad April, but I can recover from that. But my question to him is, do we need to have a bad April? Do we need to write off the whole month of April? Or are you, believing in a false hope or a false kind of belief that I'm going to have a bad April, but I'm going to rebound from that? And you're amplifying the wrong voice of a certain month, that you're just writing off that whole type of scenario. And I think that we have to look at possibilities, and we have to look at the right voices inside our head. And if you're using a superlative, if you say, I always do this, or I never can do that, or if it leads to a declaration, I'm just not good at this, that's where you're amplifying the wrong voice in your life, and it leads to a limiting belief of a superlative where you're always doing that, or you're making a negative declaration about what you can and cannot do. And so think about your life. Think about what you're trying to accomplish. Think about the goals in your life. Maybe if you're on a sports team, if you're a leader of a group, if you're trying to lead a group, if you're trying to grow a business, are you amplifying the wrong voices in your head? And we're going to talk about some positive things. I know we're starting off kind of in a negative way on this podcast, but I talk to so many people where I feel like they're dealing with this struggle. And we just need to drop down that sound level, and we need to make sure that we're not amplifying the wrong voices in our life. And we need to turn that sound down. And we'll talk about turning up the positive voices and productive voices in our head. But for this week, let's make sure that we turn down the voices of fear and doubt and negativity and that lack of confidence in our lives, and the anxiety that we can so often amplify and just live in that drama, to make sure that we turn down that sound so that we can hear the positive voices, the productive voices that want to help us to perform at our best. And as always, let's make the most of the moments in our life.